Well, a lot of stuff going on with the Celtics. Rumors are out there. Chatter about where some guys could end up. Even maybe star players being swapped. A lot happening in the NBA. And, well, Skaz and I have been talking about the luxury tax and the Celtics and what they should be doing. And I said, hey, we should get Keith Smith on the show. He knows a little something about salary caps. And while he's joining us here on 98.5 The Sports Hub right now from Spotrac, it is Keith Smith. Hey, Keith, how you doing tonight, bud?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
Well, listen, I had to take a couple of week off after the Celtics stuff. Starting to unwind a bit. I thought they were special, Keith. I thought they were going to go back-to-back. They aren't, and well, with new ownership coming in, I think the realistic expectation should be that they will not be the same team. So, can you give us an overview of where the Celtics are right now and potentially how they could move out of the second apron to the first apron, and where would you start if you were Brad Stevens?
Yeah, where they stand right now is one of the most expensive teams in the NBA. They are well over the tax, the first apron, and well over the second apron as we head into the offseason. And that's something they're going to have to deal with. And the reason why a lot of people said, well, everybody was signed. Why are they going up so much? Well, Jason Tatum's salary is increasing almost $20 million from his last year on his current deal into the first year of his extension. So that's how you get the big jump in the salary. So they're going way, way up. And they're, quite frankly, I think without Tatum, I think we all realize they're not going to be the same level of team. They're not likely to be a title contender. They're going to dip back. And because of that, it's not the right term to use, but I think this gives the front office and ownership a little bit of cover in that they can start making some of the moves that I think they knew they were probably going to have to make anyway. And that's starting to lower the payroll, not necessarily because of having to dodge the tax or lessen the tax bill. That certainly helps, in the cause. But this is mostly about getting out from under the second apron and all the restrictions that come, the frozen draft pick, the inability to make trades easily and the like. So I think what you're going to see is some shedding of salary, probably starting with guys like Jrue Holiday, Kristaps Porzingis, Sam Hauser. I don't think it'll get to Jaylen Brown, but I think they're going to be at least a little more open to listen if the right kind of deal comes around. But I don't think that'll be where it goes. But I think Holiday, Porzingis, and Hauser, there's a good chance they're not on this team anymore.
All right, I want to get back to those names in a minute here, but one of the old, when Danny Ainge was here, a lot of teams didn't like working deals with Ainge because, they felt like they got swindled, that he would always try to win the deal. Brad Stevens has done very well in his trades. There's no doubt about it. Do you think that there's a perception of that, or maybe the fact that the Celtics have done very well with their roster for years and years now? Do you think teams around the league want to do business with Brad Stevens and the Celtics?
I teams like to do business with Brad and the Celtics is because they don't negotiate through the media. If you look back at the history of the moves Brad Stevens has made, they've almost all come from out of nowhere. Like, it's like, whoa, okay, this is what they're doing. This is the direction they're going in, and it's been a little bit different. It's the ones that we day after day after day that don't ever really seem to come to fruition. So everybody kind of knew when he didn't get routed to a different team that Boston was primed to go get him, and they did pull that off. But other than that one, the moves have been kind of different ones that we didn't really see coming, and I think teams appreciate that because that means you're not having to negotiate through the media. You're not having every little conversation you have leaked and put out there, and I think that's why we've seen the Celtics, too, go back to some of the same teams for trades to time because they know they have a good working relationship with those teams and can get something done. So that's why I think it's been a little bit easier for them to make moves under Stevens than it maybe was under Ainge.
Yeah, some of the names you mentioned, Jrue Holiday, Kristaps Porzingis, even Sam Hauser for that matter. How would the Celtics be able to get out of a Kristaps Porzingis deal? He's in the last year of his contract, right? Would they have to add a sweetener to move on from it? What's the realistic expectation of Kristaps Porzingis and another team wanting him? I don't see it, but I can see them sweetening the deal to get another team to do it.
Yeah, I don't know that they're going to have to, because I think what they might end up being able to do with Kristaps Porzingis, because his contract is an expiring deal, that has some value in and of itself. We've been in a spot where expiring deals haven't had a ton of value for a period of about 3 or 4 years, but we're back now to where they do have value, whether that's teams that are trying to create cap space in the summer of 2026, when it looks like we might actually have a decent free agent class, and there's going to be a handful of teams with cap space. And then the other thing is you have all these teams that have apron issues that are like, hey, we want out of this ourselves. And what Boston might be able to do is take Kristaps Porzingis' $30.7 million contract, offer it up to another team, and basically leave it in a position where it is, hey, you've got maybe a guy who makes $24 million, for the next 2 seasons, and we'll take that contract on, because that's how they're going to get out from under the apron. And I don't know that there's going to be any one deal that does it for them, because, like I said, they're $20 million plus over that second apron starting the offseason. So I don't know that they're going to be in a position where it is, all right, let's just move Porzingis off to the Nets with a draft pick, and that's how it goes, because I don't think they want to do that. If they can do it by incremental moves, whereas Porzingis is one move, and then Holiday's another move, and then maybe he gets a Hauser as a third move, and the next thing you know, it's like, all right, we achieved it through a series of transactions. Now we got ourselves out of the second apron, and that's where we are. I think that's how you're able to pull this off with moving guys that maybe don't have the most desirable contracts. You're just going to take back smaller deals, then maybe run a year longer.
All right, we're talking with Keith Smith, Spotrac. It's always funny, Keith, whenever we talk about you, we call you sometimes Keith Smart, because you're so smart when it comes to the salary cap. So Skaz and I always laugh about that one here. But just
I did not make a shot to win an NCAA championship. I wish I did, but I did not.
You mentioned Jrue Holiday. Sounds like a lot of teams are interested. Dallas is one of them. Sacramento is one of them. The Celtics gave him an extension last year. I didn't know if it was warranted, but I figured they gave all those extensions for everyone to focus on a championship. They did. So I'll give them that credit. But I mean, is it better for the Celtics to keep good players, or think about getting out of the tax? And is there a way they can keep the core in order and maybe move on from some of the back end guys on the roster or draft picks? For the most part, one of these guys is going to go. Holiday, Porzingis. Do you think they're both, one or both, are gone after the season?
I think one of them will probably be gone. I don't know that they have to be both, and that's why, like I said, you can do this a little bit more incrementally as the way you go. I don't think there's one move that's like, there it is, that did it for us, unless it's a straight salary dump. And the only team really in position to do that this offseason right now, as far as everything's lining up, is the Nets. And I'm just not sure that's going to be where Boston wants to go. So I think, what we could see is, over the next few transaction cycles. So this offseason, the trade deadline, and then going into next offseason, that's probably where you start seeing them really whittle away at this, kind of bring this number down. But there's a world where maybe they can find the right deals where it is, all right, a team needs Jrue Holiday, because if you look at it, the last 2 places he joined up with worked out pretty good. They both ended up with championships, and clearly he's an older player. He's got a couple years at the back end of his contract that don't look so great. But I think what we might see in that position is a couple teams might look at it and say, hey, we're just more worried about winning a title in the next year or two. Jrue Holiday can help us. We've got the contracts we can send. And what might happen in a situation like that is Boston trades away Holiday at, $32 million. They take back 2 guys making, let's say, around $15 million, but one of those 2 guys gets routed to a third team. And that way the Celtics are only actually taking back $15 million, and you've now cut very big into that second apron amount, and you've really started to lower it. And then you're really in position where if you move a guy like Sam Hauser, you've kind of done what you needed to do. And I've been saying with Sam Hauser, we love what he's become. We love what he's developed into for the Celtics, but he's a bench shooter. Like, that's a really good thing to have when you're a title contender. When you're not a title contender, it's kind of like having a really great closer on a bad baseball team. What's the point? And they've got Baylor Shireman. I think they might be like, hey, if we're taking a little bit of a gap year, might as well give some of those minutes to Shireman that Hauser was playing and see if he can make a similar developmental leap like the way Hauser has.
Yeah, I think Drew Peterson has, actually. But
sure.
I don't want to mention Drew Peterson when it comes to championships, okay? But regular season, I think if they wanted a shooter, I think he could do the job. Just another thing that got brought up today when it comes to the salary cap or the tax situation. Giannis, Windhorst mentioned it today. There's been other discussions about it. It would also obviously have to include Jaylen Brown. So it sounds like a Jaylen Brown, Derek White swap for Giannis. I think Milwaukee should be all over that if that is the case. But could the Celtics look for another superstar and unload another player to save, like a Derek White, to save on the tax? Are there other superstars besides Giannis, and what do you think of the Giannis update?
Yeah, I mean, the Giannis thing is, I've been saying if it gets to the point where Giannis says he wants a trade, I 100% agree with he should be focused on staying in the Eastern Conference. The Eastern Conference just isn't nearly as hard to win as the West is. It's not as deep, and there's no Oklahoma City sitting there that looks like they're lining up for, a good long run here. So that's part one. And then part two is 29 teams are going to make a call and just see, hey, what do we need to do? Probably eliminate 20 of them right off the bat. But if Boston called and said, hey, we're willing to talk Jaylen Brown, if you're the Bucks, you have to at least consider that, because that's a move that if you do something like that, Jaylen Brown, and if you could get another good player like Derek White or somebody else, now you can kind of sell it to your fans of, hey, we traded, the best player in franchise history here, but now we've turned this into a couple guys who are pretty good, and we're going to rebuild around them and a little bit more flexibility, and that's how we're going to go forward. That could be the way this goes. I don't expect that'll be how it plays out, but like we were just saying, sometimes the Celtics, they zig when everybody thinks they're going to zag, and if they have a chance to get a good player, because it's, hey, he's actually available to us, I'd be a little surprised if they don't look into it, because I'm fairly certain they're not going to just bottom out next year. One, the East is too bad to really pull that off. They've got too much talent still on the roster. So I think what you're going to really see is the Celtics they'll make their moves, but I think there's still every intention is to still be a good competitive team and a playoff team. And if they look at it as the best way is to get Giannis, I wouldn't be surprised if they're at least involved in the conversation to some extent.
They would have to change their philosophy. The Missoula Ball philosophy would probably be a little different with Giannis on the team, you'd say?
Yeah, it would have to be. You'd have to, open it up. Now, if you're Giannis, though, the good thing is I think he would they're still going to have pretty good spacing around him, and I think he would like playing in that kind of spacing where it's, hey, let's go. Let me do, all the things that I'm good at getting downhill with the floor spaced around me. So we'd have to see how that plays out. But, yeah, that would be a test of, right, is Joe Mazzulla the coach who's going to coach one way and one way only, or is he the guy who's like, all right, this is the talent and the team I have, let's build it out this way?
I can already hear people chirping, Jason Tatum can't win it on its own. He needed Giannis. And, I can already hear it here on Boston Talk Radio. It's man. There are people still going at Tatum, by the way. Do you think he's out the entire season? Like, will he be out for the playoffs as well? Like, what? I know he's had a faster surgery, et cetera, but is there any expectation for Jason Tatum to be available for the team next season?
Yeah, all the team has said publicly, and then any conversations I've had with anyone from the team privately has been he'll play when he's ready to play. And that's kind of their way, I think, of very pointedly saying we're not rushing him back. There's no world where we're going to play Jason Tatum until, I've been jokingly saying, until he's 150% recovered. Like they're just not going to bring him on the floor until he's absolutely ready. Now, I think there's a couple things at play here. One, we have heard all these things about getting the surgery so quickly, the way the surgery was done, and the fact that it's a different world with these surgeries now. This is no longer the career-ending injury like it once was. It's more of a, it could change your career, but there's a lot of things you can do to get back to being the guy you were. Whereas, even as recently as 5 to 10 years ago, this was a completely different kind of thing. And now I think what they're looking at is, all right, let's get him in the rehab. Let's get him working. Let's get him, where he needs to be to come back. I wouldn't be surprised. It went kind of unnoticed because they stunk a year ago. But Brandon Clark, at the end of last season, when the Grizzlies season was completely gone, they brought him back, and he played in a handful of games at the end of the regular season because their thought was he's ready to play. Let's let him get out there. So then that way, what happened was Clark was, okay, I got knocked down a couple of times. Guys bumped into my leg. I played in traffic. And all that stuff was then out of his mind when he started the next year. The Pacers did that with Paul George when he was coming back from that horrific broken leg several years ago, where they brought him back at the end of a season where they didn't really need to. there's nothing to play for, but they brought him back because he's cleared. Let's just knock the rust off. Get the mental part of the hurdle of him back on the floor past now, so that way when we start the next season, I think we could see something like that with Boston. I do not think it's going to be, all right, let's throw Jason Tatum in game 2 of a playoff series because he's cleared and ready to go. I don't think anybody would do that, and I don't think that would be anything that they would really want to do.
All right, Keith, looking ahead here, potentially Thunder's Pacers final. Both teams would be a non-paying tax team.
Yeah.
I find that absolutely fascinating. I'm not saying it's over yet for the New York Knicks. I know they still got a shot here, but what does that say? Like, we were kind of talking about some of the teams that didn't pay the tax, but both teams without a tax, like, now we're really seeing parity in the NBA.
Yeah, so it's the first time ever that would be the case since the luxury tax came into play. We had 2 years with a tax. We didn't have a luxury tax because the BRI wasn't high enough. But every year where we've had luxury tax payments, one of the 2 finals teams, including 16 of the last 22 champions, were luxury tax payers. So this would be unprecedented, in this world of luxury tax payments. And I think it's kind of telling a story a little bit of, it's a little different way to build a team. Now, you have to get really good in the draft and, quite frankly, really lucky that you're going to nail some draft picks and get production out of those guys at a very high level when they're still on extremely team-friendly contracts. And then you got to be smart with the way you build the rest of the roster out. And that's really what Indiana and Oklahoma City have done. If you look up and down those rosters, there's not a bad contract on either one of them that you're like, oh, gosh, that's a rough one. And that's going to be, the way I think some teams are going to approach this going forward. I'm not ready to call this is the new way and this is how it's going to be because it's 1 year. More history tells us the way to win is to spend some money. But, I do think you're going to see some teams try to emulate this a little bit, but good luck. Those 2 teams have drafted really well. They've nailed just about every trade they've made recently. Like, that's a lot easier said than it is done.
All right, he's Keith Smith, everybody, contributor to Spotrac. Check out his show as well as Pod, Front Office Show. Keith, appreciate your time, man. We're up against it, but you know what? The draft's a month away. Why don't we have you back on? We'll do some draft stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll be ready.
You got it, Keith. Enjoy your weekend, man. Appreciate your time. We'll catch up in a month or so. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much for having me.
You got it. He's Keith Smith. Everybody check out his work. Does an excellent job. One of the best in the business, if not the best in the business when it comes to the salary cap and tax for the NBA. And also a big NBA draft guy.